We have a bulletin just received.
I've never encountered anything like this world.
Creating Photoshop images for animation. This video is about creating multi-part puppets, props, and backgrounds using Adobe Photoshop. We'll animate these Adobe Photoshop materials using keyframe animation in Adobe After Effects, which will be covered in the next video. Creating an HD-sized document. So in this video, we're going to set up an HD-sized document in Photoshop. So it'll be the same size as the video file that we're working with in After Effects for animation. So we're going to go to File, New, and we're going to choose Film and Video. And then where it says NTSC-DV or whatever it says under Size, we're going to select HDTV 1080p. And that makes it the right resolution, 72 pixels per inch for video, 1920 pixels wide, and 1080 pixels high. Okay, so this will be exactly the size of high definition video. We hit OK. And we have our blank document. And this is the document size for the exercise file that I've given you, HD background for animation. So you can create all of your content for a background on the document that you create, 1920 pixels wide by 1080 pixels high. Creating a document for a moving background. So you would only want to set up a background that's exactly high definition, 1920 by 1080 pixels, if you didn't want the background to move. If you were going to pan around on the background or zoom in, then you need more pixels. So be sure to think about what you want to do and decide how many pixels you'll need. If you're going to zoom in so something is 3 times as big, then it's going to need 3 times as many pixels. Let's say that we want to create a document with a moving background that moves from left to right. We could start off by creating a document. We have film and video 1080p 1920 by 1080. So we'll keep the height the same since we're just traveling from left to right, and we'll make the width larger. I'm going to make it 4,725 pixels. So I have a really wide document and you'll only see part of the document at any given time. And the document moving background superhero.psd that you have available for you as an exercise file is exactly this size. So in the next video about After Effects, we'll have an exercise that'll use this file, and the figure will be non-moving as if the camera were staying in position and keeping pace with him, and the background will be moving past him as he's flying. Merging layers. So I wanted to talk a little bit about merging layers. When you have a document that you're creating for a background, let's say, then you're going to want some things to be flattened and all be one layer, and then you're going to want other things to be on separate layers so that you can manipulate them separately once you bring them into After Effects. It might be smart to watch the After Effects video and this video before you start working on your Photoshop elements, so you have a full understanding of the process. So you have separate layers here, and the ways that you can combine layers into single layers are all under Layer, down at the bottom. You can do Merge Down, and that merges the layer with the layer right underneath it. See, now they've combined. I'll undo. Then you can do Flatten Image, and that combines all of the layers into a single layer. So if you're just doing a flat background to put into After Effects as a single layer, then that's what you'd want to do. Layer, Flatten Image. I will undo. Also, let's say you want to combine some of the layers but not all of them. You can take the eyeballs off to make layers temporarily invisible, then select one of the visible layers and go to Layer, Merge Visible. So now all of the visible layers, the ones with the eyeballs on, have merged into a single layer. And I'll undo. So to make things easier, think about what you would want to be in a single layer in After Effects and make that a single layer in Photoshop. And think what you want to keep separate to animate separately and make sure that's on a separate layer in Photoshop. Creating a drawn puppet. So in Photoshop, you're going to create a figure or figures most likely, and each of them can be on a separate document. But with this figure, we have each arm, each leg, the body, and the head on separate layers. And it's really helpful to label them, to give them a title, right? I called it head, torso, right leg, left arm, right arm, and background. If you give them descriptive titles, they're all going to appear in After Effects as their own individual layer, and it's going to be much easier to know which layer to drag down to animate in the After Effects timeline. If you're creating a painted figure in Photoshop to animate in After Effects, it's really important not to paint on the background. Here's the background layer. If you paint on the background layer, it's going to be white by default, and you'll have white around that limb or whatever you put on that background layer. So don't paint on the background layer. Create a new layer. Here's the little new layer symbol. You go click, and it creates a new layer. I'll undo. So each limb, each piece that's going to be manipulated separately or animated separately in After Effects has its own layer. Here's the right arm, left leg, right leg, torso, and head. So each piece that needs to be animated separately, make sure to set it up on its own new blank layer. In this exercise file, I've simplified the file by not having any joints at the elbows and the knees. There's also a file available that has separate elements on separate layers for the upper and lower limbs in the legs. This can make the creatures move more accurately, but it's also a little more complicated to animate. So if you feel ambitious, you're welcome to animate this one as well for practice. Creating a photo puppet. So this is a picture of your professor, and we're going to create a photo puppet for animation. So notice this is all one layer, but it does have a transparent background. Whenever you see those check marks, they don't print, they're not really there, they're just to indicate that it's a transparent background as opposed to a white background. So let's say we just wanted to animate the arms separately than the torso and the legs. Okay? So what we would do is I'm using the polygonal lasso tool just to make a rough selection around the arm. Okay? And I'm going to go to Layer, New via Cut. Okay, so you can only see a little telltale sign, a little cut right there, if anything, but now it's on a separate layer. I'm going to call that one left arm. So with that layer selected, I'm going to use that first move tool, the arrows, and I'm going to move it apart just so you can see it. So we're going to need to do two things because we have this hole here and we have this jagged part here. We're going to need to add extra room on the arm and on the figure, because as the arm rotates, then it's going to reveal different parts. It's going to cover different parts of the torso, and different parts of the arm will be revealed, so you need extra room on both layers. So I'm going to use the clone stamp to sample by holding Option down, click, and then painting with my sampled area and give it a little extra room. Okay? And there's a tutorial on the clone stamp from the first semester digital color class. So if you didn't cover that or you're unfamiliar with the clone stamp, then let me know and I can send you links to those videos. So now I'm going to go back to the move tool and just move this over a little bit more so I have some room to work with this layer, and I make sure I select this layer, and I'll go ahead and label that one torso. Make sure that layer is selected. Don't forget to select the right layer or you'll make a big blob of paint on the wrong layer. If I paint here and I think I'm covering up the body, but I have the arm layer selected, then I just have this extra blob on the arm layer. So make sure you have the right layer selected, torso, clone stamp. Let's see, where will I go? Option, sample. Now I'm sampling with that, and I'm giving this an extra area here to cover. That doesn't look good, so I'll sample again and cover that area. That's not too bad, and I can clean it up with an eraser. And then with the torso layer still selected, I'll go ahead and do the other arm too. Layer new via cut. I'll call that one right arm. And I'll move that over. Clone stamp. Sample again. Okay, now I'm selecting the torso again because I want to touch up this. So I want the right layer. Option, click. Okay. So now I have 3 separate layers that I could animate separately, right? And as I rotate the arms, if I'm making waving arms, then as I rotate them, I have a little extra room on the torso and the arm, so you don't have a seam showing when you start to move the arms. The Puppet Pin Tool. There's a specialized tool in After Effects called the Puppet Pin Tool. Using the Puppet Pin tool, you can apply pins and actually animate an object on a single layer, but make sure that the background is transparent. We'll have a couple exercises working with the Puppet Pin tool in After Effects in the next video. You can create as many separate files as you want in Photoshop, and then you'll import all of them into the After Effects file. You can make stuff in Illustrator or other apps too. Just drag them into your Photoshop document. Now on to the next video about using keyframe animation using Adobe After Effects.